Hey there! Welcome to a brand new episode of Muzikxpress. My name is Twan, and in this week's vlog you will see the first of two interviews which I recently did with Nick Muir. In this week's vlog you will hear the story behind the Bedrock classic For What You Dream Of. But before we start with the interview, please make sure to subscribe to my channel, and very important, also make sure to click the bell button, because then you will get a notification the next time a new vlog is online. Alright, here it is, the story behind For What You Dream Of by Bedrock, my interview with Nick Muir. Enjoy! Nick Muir is active in the music scene since the 1980s. He did release tracks under project names such as Cabala, X-Odus, Nemo, Floorjam, Monumental, and his own name Nick Muir. But he is mostly known for his long association with John Digweed for that project Bedrock. In the year 1993, the very first Bedrock track came out, which was called For What You Dream Of. For that one, Nick and John worked together with Carol Leeming, who took care of the vocals. In 1996, For What You Dream Of really became popular because it was used in a scene in the movie Trainspotting. Not only the movie became a big hit, also the soundtrack of Trainspotting became very successful. For this week's vlog I sat down with Nick Muir to ask him about the story behind For What You Dream Of and more. My first question to him was around what age he started to listen to music.
What happened in my case was my mum was a singer, and she was quite heavily into music, and my brothers, I've got two brothers, one's 10 years older and one's 12 years older. So when I was 4, they were like 14 and 16. And my elder brother John, he was a big fan of the Beatles. So he used to bring all their records home. And my other brother Steve, he was like more of a soul fan, like Four Tops, Motown, that kind of music. And so they were right at the age when they were just starting to bring these records back. And so from a real early age, I had mum's classical music playing, the Beatles from my brother John, and all the Motown stuff from my brother Steve. So, I would have been 3 or 4. And I've got actually quite vivid memories. See, music's a funny thing, isn't it? It kind of, it can take you right back to somewhere almost instantly. And a lot of that music that I remember from my early childhood, it's not really like music, it's more like a feeling, And as soon as I hear some of those early Beatles records, it takes me back to like the fairground, for example, where they used to play that, and I was having fun as a little kid, and so it had a massive influence on me from a really early age.
Yeah. And around what age did you start making music yourself?
Well, we had a piano at home, and I think, a lot of kids who are drawn to music, and if they've got a piano, I would say it's always worth having one in the house, because I was just, from the age of 2 or 3, I would go and just press notes, and I can remember making 2 to go together and thinking, well, they seem to fit, and then you do 3, so you start picking out chords and things, just because something, when you hit those notes together, kind of makes you go, that's a good sound. And mum spotted me doing this, you see, and so she went, right, lessons for you. So when I was 5, she started me on piano lessons, and so I went there, every week for 15 years, whatever it was, and did all my grades, and just went through that process of training, and doing all my scales and stuff. And no kid likes to do that, really. It's like you got that whole thing hanging over you all day. You haven't done your practice yet. But now, of course, I'm really grateful.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you do it when you're that young, then you sort of build up a facility to play, and I was always pretty good at playing by ear. I could pick out tunes, I didn't necessarily need the music to do that. I find in music that people who are really good at sight reading sheet music are not necessarily that good as ear players, but the other side of that is that I'm not a brilliant sight reader. I mean, if you give me the music, I'll sit down, I can work it out and I can learn it. But I know people who you can just drop any piece of music in front of them and just play it through perfect. I'm not one of those people. But so, I mean, what I'm saying is I went through that whole process of the classical route into learning how to play the piano.
Yeah. And what time did you start like producing music?
Oh, not for about another 25 years. No. Well, look, thing is, I did my classical training and then I went to university and I did a pretty straight music degree. And after I finished that music degree, then I left college and didn't really know what to do. I hadn't really thought about it, you know. I'd just been busy playing music at college and having good fun and passing my degree, which I did. And then after that, the first job I had in music actually was for 6 months just to fill in, make a bit of money. I worked for a music publishers, United Artists Music Publisher, and I often wish I'd continued doing that because maybe I'd have a bit more of my publishing royalties now. But no, I did that for 6 months, and then I tried to get into the BBC. They used to do a course called the Assistant Studio Managers course, which was like 2 or 3 years for graduates, and you would learn how to put radio programs together and work with tape. And I didn't get that. I'm never really quite sure why. Well, I do know why. It's you have a one-to-one interview like we're doing now, and then they give you a panel in front of 5 people, and I wasn't prepared for that really. They were asking me technical questions which I didn't really know the answer to. So if I'd had a bit more of an idea of what that was going to consist of, then I might have had a better chance of.
Yeah, you could have prepared more for it.
Exactly, but anyway, that wasn't how it was. So when I didn't get into the BBC, I thought, well, I can play, so I'm just going to see if I can pick up work playing piano with people. And this was about punk time, like 1982, 83, just after punk. And the first proper band that I played in was a band which was started by a guy called Jake Burns, who was in a punk band called Stiff Little Fingers. That's like going back a bit now, but they were a big band, Stiff Little Fingers, in punk era. And he started a band which he wanted to be like Elvis Costello in the Attractions, which was, piano, bass, guitar, and a singer and drums. And because he liked that approach, songs and that kind of sound. And so I auditioned for him and got that. And that was the start of my music career, really.
Yeah. Playing
in that band.
Yeah.
And then everything that I did subsequently to that, it's funny, it's like one thing followed on from another, It's like I met a producer when I was in that band who gave me an opportunity with another band, and I met another producer through that band, and that producer introduced me to somebody else. You know what I mean? That's how it goes.
Yeah, it's all about knowing people.
And funny that it's like a chain of events, just one thing can happen and that can start something off, which leads to something else. And it's kind of still continuing. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. See, I also read that in the 80s you were like a session musician, playing keyboard and piano for artists such as Fire Next Time, and then also for Take That. What can you tell about those days?
Well, it was good fun. I was in a band, and the producer of that band, he owned a studio, right? Like an old school type recording studio with big desks and tape machines. That's how the work was still being done in those days. And through that connection, I met some other musicians and we did some work together. And then they were looking to take that, used to go out and do their shows with backing tapes. And their manager realised that in order for them to progress, what they needed to do was get a live backing band. And I was already working together with this group of musicians. And they said, well, look, why don't you try these guys out? And so we went and met them, and we learnt some of their songs, and we did their first tour as with a live backing band.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It was amazing times, amazing times.
Yeah, I can imagine. So yeah, for this vlog, we're going to talk about the track For What You Dream Of, which is a big classic, which you did together with John Digweed under a project named Bedrock. First things first, can you tell how you and John got to meet each other?
In that band that I was talking about, that did backing work with Take That for their first tour with a band, a saxophone player in that band was a really good friend of mine, but he happened to know John. In those days, they still do these things like winter type festivals like Snowbomb, and it's in the Alps, Austrian Alps. They have music up there, they'll have like a band sometimes, and they'll have a DJ that plays, part of the entertainment, and they still have festivals. And John, at that time, this must have been, about 1989, 88, 89, he was doing some of that work in the ski regions, and Simeon was playing up there with another band. I think he might have even played with John once or twice, and they were kind of drinking buddies, and they had a good laugh together. And Simeon, who was the saxophone player, knew that I'd just around about that time, 1989, got an Atari computer, which is what everybody was getting then, and you could get lots of crack software which we weren't supposed to have, but I'm convinced that they put the cracks out just to get people in. Because it was amazing technology really for the time, and cheap. Yeah, that was the thing. So that was the the genius thing, that they'd made it accessible and they made it cheap. And I can remember doing a session with the band that I was in at the time, and the engineer Kenny said to me, "Nick, you're a keyboard player. Did you know now that you can get an Atari computer and there's a thing called a Roland D110, which is one of these like 1-unit synthesizers?" And he said it could play 16 instruments at once. And I'm like, "You're joking," And he said, "You're a keyboard player. You could probably figure out how to use that easy enough." So I went and bought an Atari computer and a Roland D110, plug it all in, and first time you do it and you put a hi-hat pattern in, you're just completely blown away. It's like, it made perfect sense to me. It's like this, that, because I had tried to play around with sequencers a little. I had like a thing called it was a Yamaha 8-track sequencer, Q something, I can't remember what the number of it was. And what you used to do in order to get sequencers to, I don't know if you know anything about this, but what you do is you'd stripe one track on a 8-track machine or 16-track machine. You'd put a code on it, a SMPTE code, and then you'd plug that SMPTE code, which you'd put onto the tape, into a sequencer and run it, and that would link it, time lock it to what was going on the tape. Of course, this is, at the time, and so you could just start writing little sequences and they're running time. It just completely blew me away, this. Right, so I'd had one of those sequences and started to do that type of sequencing around the mid-80s, something like that, 85. But house music, as we know it today, hadn't really happened as yet. In those, it was still really early days for sequencers, and the way that the sound developed, it hadn't developed into what we knew it now. That was still kind of disco 12-inch mix time around 1985, 86, and I was kind of starting to do stuff a little bit like that, but I didn't have the sound of the kick drum, which turned out to be the 909. I subsequently found out. Anyway, to get back to what I was saying, Simeon knew John, the sax player, and he said, "My mate Nick, he's doing some work with the computers and synthesizers and trying to make that type of music, on a computer, and why don't you go and see him?" And John, being John, he took the time and trouble to come to the studio and say hello, which is like typical of John, because he's he's a very proactive person. He is very interested in making things happen, and very hardworking guy. You know what I mean? Him and Sasha, they had this whole thing. It's like not to be lazy. Like if you're going to make it in music, you have to be. In those days, well, I wouldn't say actually more in those days, but definitely in those days as well. You had to be really proactive and make an effort. That's it, and make it happen. And John was good at that, and so was Sasha. And this was kind of they thought, well, we're gonna do this. We're not gonna, we're actually serious about what we're doing. John always was very serious about his DJing. So he turned up, and like I say, I had this room in a bigger studio, and of course, thing is, it's kind of, it's quite a good selling point if you're sitting there in one room of a much bigger studio, which has got, one room had a big Neve desk in, another one had an AMEC desk upstairs, and there's 224 track machines in each room. People come and go, okay, this looks like a serious
business.
A serious outfit. So, and to give myself a little bit of credit, I was starting to get a bit better at doing, the programming and getting the sounds. I'd always had synthesizers, and I was starting to, but just the fact that you were able to sequence them and combine them together is just, it's just such a huge leap forward. And so John turned up and said, right, well, let's work on something. And okay. What he used to do was, there was still all vinyl DJs in those days, of course. So he'd turn up with, a couple of boxes of records, and he was, he always knew his music very well, John. If he was down the record shop every week, listening to what was new, and buying records every week, lots of them. He's got 100,000 records at home, which I don't think he knows what to do with anymore. But what he would do is go through some music, pick out stuff which he thought was good, and then he'd say, well, I like that sound, and so we'd listen to the sound on the record, and so why don't we try something like that? And so I'd go through the presets, and you maybe try and tweak them a bit, and then write a line, and he'd go, well, okay, that sounds kind of. So that's how we started. That's it.
So what else do you remember from the production process of For What You Dream Of?
Well, I remember putting it together, some ideas that he had, and then I developed those ideas, and then I put in a couple of ideas of my own, and then he said, yeah, that's all right, but why don't we try it with a different instrument here, or something else there. And then we got nearly all the way through the arrangement of the track, and I thought it was sounding pretty good. And then he said, and now I want to put some vocals on it.
Yeah, because that's what I was curious about. Like, was it the plan already from the start to make it a vocal track?
No. And when he said that, I was like, oh, where's the vocals going to go, But anyway, he said, don't worry about it. I met this lady in a club as a singer. That was Carol Leeming, who's credited as Kyo on the record. And he said, I'll send her what we've done already, and then get her to do some vocal ideas, and then we can get her down and see if we can record them. So that's exactly what happened. She put a sort of rough vocal idea together, and between us, we wrote a few more lyrics and made a few changes here and there, and then got her into the studio, and with one of the guys who worked at the, one of the engineers who was always working at the studio, and got the vocal down on tape. And then once we got it down on tape, I sampled it all and then cut it all up and made it fit the track. So what equipment was used for the track? The kind of standard, the very standard setup for people who were doing what we were doing, especially in the UK, was Akai samplers, and you see the S1000 samples, which are kind of the second generation of those samplers. Really, they were stereo. That made a big difference, like the earlier models weren't. So we had, Pat, who owned the studio where I had my room, he'd had a hit with a band called the Wonder Stuff, who were like a indie kind of English guitar band. Mm-hmm. And they'd done really well, and he had some money. And he knew that Akai S1000 samplers were a step forward, so he went and bought 4 of them, I think. And said, yeah, I'll see what you make of those. So okay. And so I fried up my brain a bit for about 3 months trying to work those out. But which I in the end I did and got okay at programming them. And so the other thing about those samplers was they had like sort of 10 outputs. So if you had 2 samplers, then you had 20 outputs, and you put them up 20 channels of the disc, then you can mix it. See. Mm-hmm. So Akai samplers, my trusty Juno 106, Roller Juno 106, which I still got, which I'll never part with. And, I had various crummy old synths which came and went. But the basis for what you dream of was the samplers, the Juno 106, and there was an M1 involved in it, Korg M1. And I think the Roland D110 crept in there as well. But, not a lot else, really.
Yeah. So was it easy to find a label for the track once it was finished?
See, that's another story. What you have to remember about this timeline is the fact that John and Sasha had just started to work together, really. I think what happened was John was always doing mixtapes, doing like sort of hour mixes and on cassette, mm-hmm. and sending to people. And I think he sent one to, he definitely sent one to, I think he sent one to Jeff Oakes, who was Renaissance.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Sasha heard that, and they both realised that John had something in terms of, how he was making his mixes sound. And now I can't remember I don't know the exact timeline, but at one point John got Sasha to come down and play at some of the parties he was doing in the South Coast. And now, but Sasha had a profile, see? He was considered at the time to be the first superstar DJ, or certainly one of the first in the UK, because, he had the look, and, he was popular and he had charisma. And that was just about the time that DJing was starting to be something that happened over, with no kind of profile, mm-hmm. but it started to get a little bit bigger, and people would go out specifically to see certain DJs, It's like people used to go out and see bands. Yeah, that was a thing. But to go out and see specific DJs, not so much. And I can remember those times quite well, 1990, 91. I remember the first DJ I went specifically to see was Danny Rampling.
Oh, yeah.
And just because, those guys had been out to Ibiza, and they had a little bit of a following, and they were just starting to gain popularity, and I thought, well, I want to go and see that guy play. And that was a kind of a different thing. And that was just coming in. People would go specifically to see Sasha, for example. Now, that meant that the record companies started looking at them. See what I mean? It's like, well, these guys are popular and they're playing music which these people seem to love. So why don't we sign them? And Stress Records, which is run by DMC Disco Mix Club. It's kind of one of the first independent music dance labels in the UK, and they got very interested in Sasha, and then by turn John. Also, John, he had a he had a important mix CD called, do you remember Journeys by DJ?
Mm-hmm.
And the JDJ that he did turned, was a real success.
Mm-hmm.
He was lucky with that because he got some really good records. In those days, it was hard to get the clearance.
Yeah.
If there was a popular record and DJ said, I'd like to use that, then the record company owned it said, well, you can't, or they charge exorbitant amounts of money. But it just so happened for John's Journeys by DJ compilation, he managed to get a lot of really cool records cleared, and that was successful.
Yeah.
And then, of course, what happened was that Renaissance did the
mix collection.
Yeah, the mix collection.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah.
And that's where For What You Dream I've got featured. See, it's typical John again. It's like the mix collection. They decided they were going to make a big deal of it, and did all that elaborate packaging and made it
awesome.
Yeah, made it into something that was hadn't really been done that way before.
Mm-hmm.
I could remember when it just seemed such an obvious thing to do, to make a compilation where people, they could go out to their club and have their night out and then come back and then just carry on the party.
Yeah.
That was the idea of it.
Yeah.
And
but back then it was a new thing to do something like that.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so they did it. And I think one thing that John and also Sasha, they've been very concerned with is, making the quality of their output as good as it can be.
Yeah.
So they spent a lot of time and trouble getting those mixes right.
Yeah.
And John, we finished For What You Dreamed Of and mixed it, and Stress had got very interested in it. He'd played it to them because he knew people. Dan Prince was Tony Prince's son, and he was involved with the label, and they were into it. And so that got signed pretty quick to Stress, and then licensed from Stress on the mix collection.
Yeah.
And John put it #1 track on his list, on his compilation.
Yeah.
His part of it. There you go. There it is.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And that sold. I think it was well over 100,000 at the time, and that was unheard of, for that type of an album. So things, it's kind of started the ball rolling.
Yeah. So this was all in 1993, but then in 1996 the film Trainspotting came out, and For What You Dream Of was used during the club scene in the movie. This resulted in the track getting re-released, and then it ended up at the #1 in the UK dance chart for 2 weeks. Plus it peaked at the number 25 position of the UK single chart as well. Do you remember when you find out that they wanted to use the track in Trainspotting?
Trying to think.
It's been a while.
I'm trying to remember the first time I heard. You see, another thing that John and I had in common was Sasha's manager in the early days was an old friend of mine, a guy called Seven Webster. And Seven, I'd known him since the mid-'80s when I was playing in bands and doing all that stuff. And Sev, he was a guitar player and singer and involved in music basically, and was aware of what was happening with dance music in the late 80s and early 90s and got involved. And it was him who told us, actually, that I don't know what his connection with the whole thing was, but he put that track forward as being part of the kind of new breed of that type of sound out of the UK. Of course, Trainspotting is a British film. And I remember him saying to me, we've got this film, British film, and they're kind of interested in using that track. And I'm like, well, yeah, okay, British film, the British films are rubbish, and I just didn't think it would amount to very much, but they said, well, yeah, that's what they're going to do. They're going to use it. And they did use it. And then it seemed to, the film was made, and obviously it was, it was a bit better than I thought it was.
Yeah.
And I can remember speaking to my accountant at the time, and he said, "Yeah, they've released a soundtrack of that film, and they're expecting to sell 2 million units." No, oh, good.
Sounds good.
That's good.
So did you get to see the movie in the theaters when it came out?
No, not really. I mean, I have been to the cinema and seen it, but it wasn't. There was no. We weren't part of the premiere or anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, Trainspotting, you've seen it. It's a fairly sort of gritty kind of, no nonsense, hard hitting film. So, I'm not sure if there was any of that kind of premiere kind of thing going on. It was one of those things that just built and built in terms of its popularity. And of course, the whole thing about that film was it was a bit of a sort of a cult classic, really. It wasn't like a sort of huge feature film, which, with Harrison Ford, which dropped on everybody.
Yeah.
It was something that people gradually discovered along with the soundtrack.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of one of those things that built momentum.
Yeah.
So, and it kept going and did very nicely for us,
Yeah. So when you went to the cinema, did you say until the end to see your name in the credits?
No, twat. Actually, that's fine. What I did like was when they released the soundtrack album, and I can remember that Bedrock was, because it started with a B.
Oh, it was on top of...
Yeah. I remember the list of artists on there, and we were right on top of the list.
Oh, so Underworld must have been like Lost on Ice.
Exactly. Yeah. We were right up there. And so I remember thinking, that's a pretty good look.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this year, For What You Dream Of, it turns 30. So how important has this track been for your career?
Well, what it meant was that I could concentrate on writing and producing and not have to go on tour anymore with bands.
Oh, yeah.
That's basically what it meant for me. Now, which is what I had always wanted to do. I found touring as a player to be... I didn't really like it that much, actually. I met some great people, I had some great times, played some big shows, all that stuff. But I found it a bit boring. And also, when you're touring, what happens is, you make the journey, you get to your destination, you go and do a sound check, you do the show, you finish the show, you get drunk, that's it, and then you do it the next day. And I found it's like that your whole day was centered around that period in the evening where you do your show, and that's kind of, and I did it didn't feel, it's not very creative, really.
No.
Okay, so you get on stage and you play and you put on a show. Yeah, I guess you could say that's creative. But for me, that's like zero creativity in terms of what I felt I had inside myself to express.
It's like the same, like over and over again.
Yeah, that's right. It's good. Yeah, exactly. A bit mechanistic.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be sitting in the studio, experimenting with sounds, building stuff up, and see if I could make a better record. It's always been about making records for me.
Yeah.
Making records is, if you can make a decent record, I think you're doing pretty well. It's not easy, And also, there is something magic about putting certain elements together, and that they work, and you can feel it coming together. That's a real buzz, proper real buzz,
Yeah.
It's like standing up on stage in front of 6,000 or 7,000 people, which I've done lots of times. It doesn't compare for me.
Yeah. Okay.
To the buzz that you get from when you put something together which really works as a recorded piece.
Yeah. You're still putting stuff together because you're still active with releasing new tracks and remixes. Can you name some of your most recent releases?
Well, right now, currently, I've got a track called Lux Eterna, which is out on Crafted Records. The remixes, which one was done by some guys from Argentina called Pax, Paax, brackets Tulam, which is a town in Argentina. I think that they put that because there's probably somebody else with that name. But anyway, there's a remix by Pax of my track Lux Eterna. Also Amare, she's done a remix, and that package is out now on Crafted Records. Previous to that, my previous solo record was called All One Word, and that had some amazing remixes by GMJ and Matter, and also Try Lucid, who are really, really talented guys. That's out now. So those are the two latest releases. There's John and I, we do quite a lot of remix work together still. We haven't had an original track out, the two of us, for quite a while, which is maybe something that we should look at doing. But he's got an album coming out later this year, which I can't really say anything about or else he'll sack me.
Yeah.
And we've done remixes and collabs. We do quite a bit of collaborating now. You see, because it's easier to work online now, John can throw me an idea, I can work on it in the studio and then send him an example of what I think he meant, and then he'll come back and critique it and direct it. And then we've got some really good results that way.
I mean, you worked together for like 30 years already.
Yeah.
More, yeah.
And I can't, it's not, we're not telepathic or anything, but I do have a kind of idea now of what he will find acceptable and what he won't. He'll, there's certain elements, and the way that he likes the music to sound, just where it is on the spectrum of dance music.
Mm-hmm.
He likes it kind of tough, but on the other hand, not too much of a noise.
Mm-hmm.
And but he likes it to have music in it. He likes, one of the first things he said to me when we started working together and trying to make tracks was, well, I like music. And it sounds obvious, but what he meant was, if you remember the early 90s, there's a lot of stuff which was kind of, techno, which was pretty noisy, and there's a place for that and everything. But I think John likes, I think what he meant was he likes to have the music that he plays and works on to have a little bit of soul to it, a kind of bit of a human element to it, and well, to have some kind of a soul is, I can't think of a better way to put it than that, really. And I think if you listen to quite a bit of what he does, then that thread sort of comes through it. You know what I mean? There's like that human thing about it.
Yeah. So what kind of music do you listen to in your spare time?
Oh man, there's so much music, isn't there? You see, one thing I'll say about dance music and what we do is that it seems to me that it's quite addictive, really. It has an addictive quality to it. And the people who are into it are really into it, And I have to say, when I got heavily involved in dance music in the early 90s, then, since then, it's kind of, I would say, 70 or 80% of the music that I listen to are mixes by DJs. And, just because you're trying to hear, I'm just intrigued with what people are doing with it that's new, and trying to hear the imagination that people are using, how, I'm very dance music centric, I have to say. But I listen to all types of music. There's quite a bit of modern classical music, which I know sounds a bit boring, but and also you've got to remember I'm not a young guy, and so I listen to older stuff, things like Frank Zappa I'm very fond of, and there's a strand of music from the 70s and 80s by minimalist composers out in New York people like Steve Reich and, you know, Philip Glass and Terry Riley, and it's very repetitive kind of classical music, which, you know, of course feeds into the dance thing because it's loopy, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I like that kind of stuff.
Do you still listen to the Beatles?
I mean, I do. My brother's a big fan. You see, the thing is, you've got to remember that those records, Beatles records, are kind of generally considered now to be some of the sort of finest examples of recorded music that there ever has been. You know, so it's like my favourite Beatles album, I'd have to say, the White Album. And I can remember as a kid really liking Revolution 9, which is the big sound effects collage thing that they do, which a lot of Beatles fans sort of say that that's rubbish. But, you know, it's got that psychedelic thing to it. And this, also I love Magical Mystery Tour. And, you know, I like music which is drug inspired. That's it.
I like that quote. And the last question, pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Oh man, no.
No?
No, you can't do that.
Okay.
It's not cake.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for your time and good luck with everything.
Thanks.
Alright, that was it. This week's vlog, my interview with Nick Muir and the story behind For What You Dream Of by Bedrock. Nick, thanks a lot for your time. Much appreciated. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the vlog. If you did, make sure to give this video a like, leave a comment in the comment section below, and very important, make sure to subscribe. Also make sure to click the bell button, because then you will get a notification the next time a new vlog is online. And I did a second interview with Nick. In that one we talk about the Bedrock classic Heaven Sent, and that interview will be online in a couple of weeks from now, so stay tuned. Once again, thanks for watching, and until next time, bye bye.